Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, a place where you can come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 104, Relationships Need Boundaries. As you know, this month we're all about what makes a relationship healthy and viable, or not so healthy and rather toxic, and how to take some time and reflect on the relationships that you're in and your own behavior in your relationships. So each week this month, we're looking at different aspects because I think each one is so important. And each one is really, like we've been saying, a discussion in of itself. So today I want to look at perhaps the most foundational piece if we want to have trust and closeness in a relationship. And one of my favorite topics, boundaries. I know we've talked a lot about boundaries in previous episodes, but I couldn't talk about healthy relationships this month and not get into them a little bit at least. And I want to take some time today to reflect. Let's look at our relationships and let's look for the boundary issues, because sometimes they're not immediately visible. In fact, we can often mistake someone's chaos for, bad luck, poor person. Maybe they're over caring and rescuing us for codependent behavior. And our own struggle to face reality is doing the best we can, quote unquote. So before we get into all of this, let's check in first on your boundaries. And when you hear these, I want you to gut level with yourself lovingly, but honestly, and truthfully give yourself the answers to the following. In your relationships, does it feel like a roller coaster where at times things seem incredible and yet no time they turn into what feels pretty horrible? So there's not a lot of time in between where it's pretty leveled out. Do you have awful fights and break up only to get back together more than once and without real sustained changes happening? So the same issues just keep coming up. Do you ever feel like people don't respect your feelings or your time? Do you find yourself always having to help people out of their chaos, where they have recurring problems like every other week? Do you fall for people easily and become so absorbed you kind of feel like you lose yourself in that relationship over time? Is there a lot of conflict in your relationships? What usually starts it? Is it perhaps when you confront them about their irresponsibility, or when you say no? Do you spend a lot of time feeling really frustrated that others in your life just don't want to get their shit together? And you know perfectly how and when and where they should do that, right? You know just how they should fix it. Do you find yourself being the default person in your relationships who's always the responsible one, who picks up the pieces, who is so reliable, hardworking, and can be counted upon? And finally, do you often get frustrated at others because you're rushing around, running late, too much to do, or maybe even need to have some alone time, but you're not asking for it? Well, how did you do? Did any of these statements resonate at all? Maybe a little bit, maybe sometimes. Or maybe they would have 6 months ago before you started working on yourself. Maybe you were doing better and kind of slipped back into some old behaviors. Don't be hard on yourself if most of them ring true. I ask those for a reason. I do believe if you sit there long enough and look at the drama and chaos that might be going on, your frustration level, your anxiety, your anger, it can often be boiled down to a boundary issue or a set of boundary issues. And usually it's us not setting those boundaries appropriately. So we're angry at them, we're upset with them, because we haven't been taking care of ourselves. So why are boundaries so important? I think one of the biggest things that we don't often talk about is your own identity, your values, what matters most to you, like honesty, emotional safety, spirituality, family, work ethic. We've done some episodes on values, so if you're not really clear about what that's all about and what yours are, I encourage you to go back and listen to them. So your identity, in my mind, is what you're about, like your integrity, what you're willing to do and not willing to do, regardless of who's in front of you asking, or begging or pleading or screaming or yelling or crying or manipulating. These are defining boundaries. They don't change given the circumstances. There are financial boundaries, what you'll earn, save, spend, give, etc. For example, you can say, I'm saving for a new car, so I'm not going to be buying a lot of lattes or a lot of things outside of necessities for some time. So you're saying no to yourself there, and no to others perhaps, who want to go out to eat. Your physical boundaries, the obvious ones are your body, your space, your things. A good example of defining physical boundaries are, I don't allow people to touch me inappropriately or threaten my health and safety in any way. Or I prefer people to call ahead, not just pop in my house whenever. Don't blow up my phone at 11 p.m. Or you might say, I don't like my partners to borrow things without asking first. And I don't go rummaging through their belongings either. I respect my own personal space and things, and I respect others. What about your emotional boundaries? I think our emotional boundaries are less obvious to us, and we have a harder time taking care of those. A very clear example is, I don't allow others to call me names, rage at me, or ridicule me or those I love. Example of struggle setting emotional boundaries is when others keep asking you the same question and they don't hear your no, and you don't set a firm boundary around that. You don't get up and walk away from the conversation. Or they shame you for what you feel or what you need or what you're walking through. A big emotional boundary is when you're saying no and you're saying what doesn't work for you, and they turn victim on you and rage at you and manipulate you and try to make you feel like shit for saying no. Saying things like, I can't believe you're doing this. You just ruined everything. Now we can't go at all. Now we can't do this. Now we can't do that. Try to make you feel bad for saying no and, asking for what you need in the process. Don't ever apologize for what you feel and what you need and what you're not willing to do. Time boundaries. A good way of honoring your time boundaries is not overcommitting. Say no when you don't have time to do something, because that's just reality. You learn how to delegate and turn away work. Maybe you say, I don't answer work emails after 5. Or maybe personal emails and texts after 9 because I want to go to bed. Maybe you set the do not disturb on your phone and your iPad. You make sure you schedule time each week to get your act together, get your calendar together, get your to-do list together. And you set aside downtime too, to take a walk, read a book, take a nap, meditate. Example of poor boundaries in this area of time is saying yes to requests without even looking to see if you even have time for that. Allowing your own needs to suffer while you're doing stuff for everyone else. Time boundaries are not ones that we talk about enough, but it's a big deal because if you don't put boundaries around your time, you're not practicing self-care, and you're not going to be a lot of fun to be around. You're going to be stressed out and frustrated with everyone else. So those are some examples of boundaries. There's a whole bunch more, but that gives you a sense. And the big thing about boundaries and why I think they really help relationships is because each person takes personal responsibility for self, for your thoughts, which means you don't change your mind because someone doesn't approve or agree with you. You think things through and get your own why together. You get grounded and solid in your own truth, which is tricky because when you're confronting someone and saying no and then they lose it on you, it can be scary and very upsetting. We're afraid of losing their love, their approval. We're afraid of losing the relationship. And guys, sometimes that can happen. If we have to set a big ass boundary, yeah, they're not going to like you very much. But you're not the bad guy. Each person takes responsibility for their own feelings, which means you do not leak them onto other people. You take care of old wounds and triggers with therapy and grief work. You have an empowerment coach to keep you accountable. You're doing lots of reading, lots of journaling. You're working through old grief. You're working through old behavior patterns that have hurt you. We're basically maturing on the inside. A big part of growing up on the inside is healing where we got emotionally stuck. And we got emotionally stuck because there wasn't anyone there to listen to the pain. Now you can listen to yourself. Other healthy, caring, loving people today can validate what has happened and the impact on you. When we don't do that, we do visit it on other people. We act out, we get defensive, we get reactive. Taking personal responsibility absolutely means owning your choices. You knew I was going to say that. Every stinking last one of them too. You are constantly choosing a million things a moment, I say. We are, and we forget it. So much of what we do throughout the day is automated, so of course we're not thinking about that. What to focus on, what to do, what to prioritize, what to wear, what to leave alone, what to give your energy to, what to walk away from. You get to choose. You may not like what you have to choose between. Sometimes we don't. And sometimes we have god-awful choices we have to make. But we are always choosing. And we can pretend to outsource that responsibility and blame, and because of them, and I wouldn't have had to do it if you weren't such a jerk, all that stuff. At the end of the day, the choice is ours, and we need to own it. We can't have good self-esteem, and we can't have healthy relationships without owning our choices. That's a huge deal. If you take nothing else away from this episode, I hope that sticks with you. Taking personal responsibility means not avoiding. And if you struggle with avoidance, it means working your butt off on it. Avoidance is about controlling the outcomes you fear. It's about not saying no when you should. It's about not saying what you really mean or what you truly feel in the moment. It's about allowing toxic behavior to continue, to allow situations to deteriorate, and to allow all forms of abuse to continue. Sadly, avoidance is all about fear. Fear of what might happen if I say no. Fear I'm not strong enough to say no and hold the no. That I'm a bad person, that I'm selfish, that I'm this, that I'm that. And avoidance is all about running from reality instead of facing it head on, which is not easy. I don't want you to feel bad about yourself if you know you struggle with avoidance and procrastination and all that stuff. But I think you know as well as I do by now, it has huge impacts on your relationships and how you see yourself. When we're avoidant, people can't trust us. We often don't follow through on what we said we were going to do. They can't trust our word. Hell, we can't even trust our own word anymore. It is something that does need to be really worked on and tackled as best we can. And if you struggle with avoidance, you cannot fix that alone. You need loving accountability around you. People who will kick you in the pants when you keep kicking the can. Taking personal responsibility and having good boundaries means I'm not rescuing other people from consequences that they need to sit in and face. I'm not fixing people, including their feelings, because I don't want to invalidate and render them helpless and control. That's me controlling. And like I always say, we're rescuing ourselves, not them, because we can't handle the possible reality. When you think about it, it's actually pretty self-centered, and it has nothing to do with freedom and choice. Having good boundaries means I can detach. In other words, that's about them, and I can let go of that outcome, or at least understand I have no control over that. There I need to grieve, right? Like we've been talking about. And go kicking and screaming to acceptance that I can't change that about them. That's what they think. That's what they feel. That's what they say they need. Me trying to argue and ask them again is me controlling. It's essentially telling the other person that I don't like reality and I want them to change because I can't handle reality. Grieving helps us work through to acceptance of reality. Detachment and boundaries go hand in hand. And when you work on one, you got to work on the other. And you need them both. If we don't have detachment and boundaries in our relationships, it cannot feel emotionally safe. If you're not allowed to have your feelings because they invalidate you and say, what's the big deal? That's not true. That's them trying to change your mind because they can't handle what you're saying. That's not okay. When you rescue your partner, you parent them, and you cannot rescue and respect the same person. That's not okay. Detaching, grieving, letting go of the outcomes, focusing on what we can control. That is okay. Finally, and a big portion of boundary work is good communication skills. I statements, staying on your side of the street, speaking your truth that you have thought about. You're not saying it to act out. You're not saying it to punish. You're not even talking about them. You're talking about you. I need, I think, I feel, I've decided. I won't allow that. I need to own. I need to apologize. I'm afraid. I'm sad. I'm angry. When you do that, it hurts. I have to allow you to have your choices. I'm sorry I rescued you yesterday. Emotional honesty. It's what's really going on for you. You keep it about you. You're no longer focused on them. You give them data about you. The ball goes to them. They weave it into whatever other data they have going on at the time. Then they choose for self. And we have no control over that, which is what we hate. Because if we were honest, we would like to control everyone's thoughts, feelings, and reactions. So we think. You work at this for a while, you're not going to want that. Here's why. We can't trust their truth if we're feeding it to them. We can't trust them doing something just to placate and kiss ass that is genuine, because it's not. It's what we wanted them to do, and they wanted us off their back. If we want trust in our relationships, we need to experience that we can have our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own choices, and that's okay. Your partner, your friend, your sibling, your parent, your colleague may not like that, but they show you respect for that. We are not responsible for other people's thoughts, feelings, or choices either. We need to be able to detach and allow others to figure things out and take responsibility for ourselves so they can trust us. So whatever is within our wheelhouse, we are taking ownership of. If we have issues with our health, with our behavior, with our finances, with our career, with our kids, with our family, We are taking ownership. And that means being able to articulate that and doing whatever it takes to do whatever we can to heal and to fix things and make things right. Boundaries in relationships mean we delineate who owns what so that problems can be solved by the people they belong to, because they're the only folks who can do that. And that's why previously, when we just talked about control and enabling and rescuing and manipulating, the problem doesn't get solved. You just put a Band-Aid on it. You put a Band-Aid on someone else's gaping wound. Oh, it's only going to fester and get worse. The only time things get better in relationships that I have seen is when each person takes full responsibility for self, whatever is going on for them, good, bad, ugly, indifferent. They take it seriously and they understand if they do not work on those things, the other person may not be able to stay. They may not want to engage with you. They may not want to engage. They may have to let go of the relationship. It means you own whatever work you need to do. Those relationships that get better, it's when the individuals are not afraid to look in the mirror and do whatever it takes to get healthier. And yes, the relationship gets healthier. Your sister, your mom, your colleague, your neighbor, your friend, your child trust you more because you're owning it. But here's the thing we often forget. You are going to be the one who benefits tenfold because you are going to feel so much better about yourself. You are facing things actually that exist within yourself. And that is also going to give you a lot more courage and empowerment to face the boundary issues out there that you need to deal with. There is no way we can stand in our truth and stand in our no if we don't trust ourselves. If you found some big things hit you with this episode today, my encouragement is don't do this work alone. Get some loving support, get a good coach, get a good therapist if you have some trauma work, get some help. There's so much wonderful stuff on the other side. So today we talked about how important boundaries are to having a healthy relationship and how we need to look at the different areas of boundary work to do an accurate assessment. Our boundaries with others and within ourselves, I think, are the foundation of having trust in our relationships. Thank you so much for joining me today, because I know that was a choice. May you stay healthy, grounded in your truth, and hold on to hope. Focus on the good in you and find the good out there this week. Be sure to check the show notes at ownitpowercast.com and sign up for the newsletter each Tuesday if you don't already get it. That's where all the great bonus downloads are. All right, so pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.